this week I'd like to start off by saying you're welcome to our fans preemptively.
Wow, presumptuous, but okay, go ahead. Why?
Well, we are both very, very sick. We've spent the last several days barely getting out of bed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they'll be able to figure that out from the fact that I sound like a man, but...
Well, both of our voices have been off and
yes, but
miserable.
at least I can actually eke out noise at this point, so that's an improvement.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm Tyler.
I'm Shay.
And this is Cinematically Correct. And this week is your choice.
Yes, and it's the current movie, so I had picked Charlie Says. Now, before we get into the movie, I did want to kind of do an apology because I thought this was going to be a movie in theaters. I looked it up like a month ago of like movies coming out in May, went through like a bunch of trailers, and this is the one that looked the most interesting. Then as it got closer, I started realizing that it was only in select theaters. And then we were not select. So I had to then wait to Amazon Prime, which it released last Friday.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You lucked out on that one.
Yeah, seriously. But anyway, so hopefully we will have an in-theaters movie either next month or the month after. Next month is yours, so I'm not going to force you to do it in theater, but hopefully soon.
All right. So where do we go from here? Brief synopsis?
Brief synopsis.
Do you have one?
Movies about the Manson family committing crimes and speaking with the women involved in prison.
Yes, so...
That's basically the movie.
So I'll kind of do my own version of a brief synopsis just to kind of...
Oh, you're mixing it up now. All
well, right. Just because... So this particular movie, Charles Manson actually kind of plays a secondary character. So this movie is told through the eyes of a psychologist who... I guess teacher, technically. Teacher? Psychologist? I'm not really sure. But a woman who helps the Manson girls learn while they're in jail. So we see everything through kind of the girl's perspective rather than through the Manson perspective, which I'm more used to.
Right.
So it's not focused really on the murders. It's focused on the brainwashing and dominance.
The indoctrination, the Charlie is always right, which is a terrifying thing.
Right. I believe they only showed one murder. Like
two sets of murders.
Okay, two. Wait, what was the...
The first one was the Sharon Tate murder. And
okay.
The second one was the married couple where they go back out the second night.
Okay, so it was the LaBianca murders and the Tate murders.
Yes.
Okay, so there were other murders that they didn't show. I think they were trying to show just what the girls that were specifically in...
prison were convicted for.
Right.
Yes.
And they also, obviously, one of the characters was made to be kind of the sympathetic character of the bunch, which would be Leslie Van Houten.
Otherwise known as Gilly from Game of Thrones.
Yes. So how much do you know about the Manson murders?
Well, more now, but I knew some of the basics beforehand. I knew that they had killed a whole bunch of people.
But you didn't have, like, a lot of background on it, right?
Not that much background now.
Okay. So I will say that while watching the movie, I was trying to figure out who Leslie Van Houten really was because I read Helter Skelter. And if you read that book, there's a particular person in it, which I've later found out was Linda Caspian, I believe her name was, that was kind of involved but not really involved. Like, she went to a murder but she stayed outside and she was horrified by the whole thing, and so that's kind of the vibe I was getting. I
believe.
Yes, but that was kind of the vibe I was getting with the way they were portraying Leslie Van Houten, was that she was kind of there but she only participated because somebody told her to. So I was like, well, maybe they're kind of exaggerating her role or something, because from what I read in Helter Skelter, Leslie Van Houten was not a sympathetic character. No. Maybe she is now. Well, I think she's like in her 60s.
Well, I think she was the sympathetic character of the people that were going to prison, not the people testifying for immunity, because she was the youngest, if I'm not mistaken.
She was.
So she was 17 or so, something like that? 17, 18? She was very young.
I don't remember the age, but she was the youngest. But, okay, so before we get into, like, what the actual girls were like and all that kind of thing. I kind of do want to start at the beginning, how they showed the Manson clan and like how he lured women in and like how that whole dynamic worked.
It was really odd, and I mean, he very clearly targeted vulnerable women,
right?
Which is a horrible thing to do.
I mean, they showed I don't remember the name. I actually don't know if they gave her a name, but one of the guys brought a girl in, and the girl was aggressive. Yeah, she was just kind of like, no, you're a creep. Basically, it was the vibe that she gave off was like, dude, no. He said something like, do you want to see my sausage? And she's just kind of like, no, dude, I don't actually.
Well, she had too much self-esteem and confidence in...
She had a backbone.
Yeah.
Where these other girls...
were very submissive and very easy to manipulate, and
right
after enough time of indoctrination that there's just... There's nothing they can do.
Right. Now this, from what I have read and seen, is similar to Ted Bundy in that people found him extremely attractive when he was younger.
Well, so I've heard stories of Charles Manson being very charismatic before he carved a swastika in his face, but before that, he was supposedly very well-spoken and
so
charming.
Charismatic but not attractive. Because I'm just asking because I looked up photos. And again, I don't see it.
Well, he's got the dirty hippie vibe from back then.
We have people that listen to the podcast that are from that era, so we might want to use derogatory terms.
Well, he's also only 5'2".
I'm 5'1.5". What are you trying to say?
You're not a man, and you're also not a cult leader that I know of.
That you know of, so you wouldn't put it past me.
Oh, I put nothing past you.
Awesome. Great. Wonderful.
But I don't think I'd ever, like, there were guys as part of his group. I don't know how I would feel about taking orders from someone that's 5'2". Like, dude, you live in the middle of nowhere on a farm with nothing. Why am I listening to you again?
I mean, fair. But I do think so it was in California.
Yes.
It was at something ranch. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically an old movie set.
Saban Ranch or something like that?
Something to that effect. But it was an old movie set that they repurposed. I don't actually think they mentioned that part of it in the film.
Well, they did go into the 80-year-old geriatric owner of the farm being serviced, which was a scene I didn't need.
Yeah, okay, so they do that in the film, and honestly, so Helter Skelter is written from the perspective of the cop who arrested them. So a lot of the information you get are like evidence that he hears and his perspective from talking to the witnesses and things like that. So anyway, from the vibe I got from Helter Skelter, the old man was just kind of an old man that Charles Manson also took advantage of. Like, he was offering him a good deal because he was a nice person, and I do think he probably knew that there was some weird stuff going on, but he was kind of like, whatever, not my business. Like, I'm getting...
Well, he's 80 and he's past the point of caring.
Right. But I never got the vibe that he used the girls for favors.
I don't think he used them. I think that was something that was thrown in as part of the brainwashing.
Maybe. I don't really know, but that part was weird for me, and I don't know. And I don't know if that's not true, if that never happened. Like, I don't know how the family would feel to see something like that, because he was an innocent bystander regardless. Right. So that was a little weird.
It's just, there are a lot of scenes that were kind of, didn't really need that.
Like?
The old man intro, didn't need to know that.
Yeah, that was near the beginning.
The whole stripping the girl naked.
Oh, right.
Like the first night she's there.
I believe, was to show how he demoralized somebody to the point of feeling...
He broke her down and then built her back up. But, so I understand that part of it. It's just, it was kind of like, that escalated quickly and I'm not staying. This is taking a really creepy direction. No, thank you. Not from me.
Now, one thing I will say about this film that I wish that they did better, I feel like if you watch this film and you grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, you would understand that the free love and the, you know, the vibe of like peace and wanting this big family and all that stuff was typical, normal.
Right.
The copious amounts of sex and all of that, I feel, was a little bit more normal. The drugs that they did, I believe LSD was a big one.
Yes.
Was a little bit more normalized. Where for somebody in our generation, that's a little bit like why would you want that? Why, like, not that it's a bad thing and you don't judge anybody,
was very
but
much about the experience and then trying to open up your mind and
right. But for us in our generation, that's a little bit shocking and would probably raise a red flag for us immediately. Where back then it probably was a little bit more accepted. Like, you may have been like, okay, it's a little bit much, but it wouldn't be raising a million red flags.
Charlie. It's not this guy's going to murder a whole bunch of people.
Right. But if we saw that now, we'd be like, no, that's a cult. Thank you.
I'm calling an Uber. Right. Thank you.
So I wish that they had given just a little bit more, even just like a screen where it kind of explained, like, this is kind of what the culture was like back then, or like maybe put like a little bit of news articles up or something just to kind of give you like a basis for like, this wasn't that out of the ordinary, the culture that he was creating, right. Just because I think that would have helped you understand the girls a little bit better.
Well, he also took everything away from them systematically. So he took clocks, he took phone,
he made them give their money.
All money. I mean, people didn't have cell phones, obviously, but he regulated when they could talk to people. And it was really all the behavior of the controlling boyfriend or girlfriend, the controlling where you go, what you do, all of that, which is very unhealthy.
Right.
And just, no. Like, there was one where it's the men eat first.
Oh, yeah, when they were all sitting around the table.
No.
That was, I think Tex actually said that, I believe.
It was something, and you're just like, no, that's not all people are free and equal kind of idea.
Yeah. No, granted, it is a different time period. So I do know I was reading some articles that was saying that back then, male dominance was still more widely accepted. I mean, obviously women's rights had started and all of that, but male dominance was more widely accepted than it is now. It wasn't as challenged.
Right.
So again, not as off-putting.
Although I'm not eating any of it at all if it's from the garbage. So.
Oh, I know. Like, that I don't remember ever reading about.
No, thank you. No.
I mean, I understand the concept of reusing and saving.
Not being wasteful and
right.
all of
I'm
that.
the most frugal person on the planet.
I would just assume that stores that have excess food donate it rather than throwing it away. But as soon as it goes in the trash, I ain't eating it.
Right. No.
Not happening.
No, that was no. Nope. No, thank you. Pass. Because I know what else goes in the trash, and no, thank you.
Yeah.
Nope.
There was a lot of instances of that where it's manipulation and putting people down and then breaking them down. Like the tiny female brain comment.
Oh, I know. And now, granted, he was doing that, I think, because he felt threatened at that moment. So he needed to bring her down a few pegs. And I totally understand that is something that somebody who is trying to assert their dominance will do. But, yeah. And now, I do want to say they did show the shift from Charles Manson at the beginning was more about love and peace and being hippie and whatever, and then a shift to violence. And
well, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it was over a long period of time, but he snapped at some point.
Right. And I question whether his goal was always to move towards violence, or if the music industry and Hollywood and his failure is what changed him.
I think it was partly his obsession with wanting to be famous. And if you couldn't be famous by being a musician or an actor or whatever, then he's going to do it any way he can. And that just, he had a thought, you know what? This might be easier. I'll do it this way. I'll be infamous, not famous. Because there is a difference.
That leads me to my question of, back when we did the Highwaymen movie, we said that we enjoyed the fact that they removed the Bonnie and Clyde kind of aspect of it because we didn't like the fact that they were sensationalizing killers.
Right.
But in this scenario, in the Charles Manson movie, they're not sensationalizing him. They're definitely putting him down. But I think because of the fact that he's had so many books written about him, movies written or made by him,
I mean,
he is famous.
Everyone knows that. I would argue that he's not famous. He's infamous.
Okay, fair, but he's very well known.
He's well known for the horrible things that he's done.
Right, so do you think that is okay?
And I'm glad he's dead. Happy with that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Some articles I actually read on this movie did not know he was dead, and that was weird. Like, they were saying things like, well, it's pretty awful to sensationalize somebody, especially somebody who's still alive, that it's a murderer. And I'm like, oh, he died a while ago.
Well, I mean, the women are still alive, some of them. So,
yes.
I guess technically that's accurate. But no, he took the path of least resistance. I don't think that was really a thing back then. I mean...
Bonnie and Clyde was before him.
It was before them, but it was... I don't know when the sensationalization of horrible things started. Was it Bonnie and Clyde? Was it...
I don't know
Charles
when it started,
Manson,
but it's in rare form right now.
Well ingrained at this point, which is just...
But do you think that it's a bad thing that basically somebody who failed at being famous decided to turn to murdering, and then he essentially became infamous, as you want to call it, but he still became extremely well known and a household name?
I do think that is a problem, and that's a bigger problem that we as a society have to come to terms with. I would very much prefer, if there's any kind of violence or attack of any kind, to not know anything about the person.
Just what they did.
Just what happened. And to remember the victims and not give any kind of publication or time or thought towards the person responsible, other than either knowing that they have died or that they are spending the rest of their life in prison. I don't need to know who they are, what they believe. I don't need to know anything about them, because I just assume that they are the worst people in the world and they're losers that couldn't do anything worthwhile with their lives.
See, I think the trouble with that is people want to know the psychology behind it. They want to know the why. They want to know what brought them there.
They can still be studied. I just don't want it to be publicized. They can still have a psychologist go in and... But
the mass amount of people want to know that, because they want to know, can my next door neighbor be that? And the sad answer is, no matter how much you know, generally speaking, you can't pick out the person on the street. You just can't. They could be your best friend and you won't know. That's a sad truth. But people still feel that need and want to know, and that's the struggle. So I just wanted to bring it up because I don't know how I feel about it, because I am very invested in true crime. I very much want to understand what brings people to that point.
So I want to understand that part, but I mean, you could either change the name of the person or just not release anything about them other than this is what happened and this is why. There have to be ways to go about giving the clarification on things without giving celebrity to the person, because that's horrible.
Right. I mean, at the very least, we should be holding off releasing information like that until they've passed. And that did not happen in the Charles Manson case. No. He had admirers, pen pals. He had a whole website dedicated to him. Like, it did not happen.
He was very crazy. Do you know that he wanted to basically be the second coming of Jesus? Or he thought he was?
So did John Lennon. So.
Well, John Lennon, to my knowledge, didn't murder a whole bunch of people or
people to I read a quote while I was researching this of something he said that was related to Jesus Christ. I did not keep it because I thought that was really weird and creepy. But
I mean, his whole premise was based off the Beatles, so it's tied in. So well done.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had kept it.
Helter Skelter is a Beatles song. It's also about an amusement park ride in England.
Yes.
And he thought it was a coded message like a crazy person.
Yep, basically, yeah.
Yeah, so
okay, before we move too far past it, I do want to ask, do you feel sympathy for the girls? Because I feel like you have less information than I do. You really have mostly what was given in the film. So I'm just curious, Like, do you actually feel bad for them?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, on the one hand, I do fully understand that they were so overwhelmingly brainwashed and manipulated by this person that really their actions are not representative of an individual thought process. They're essentially functioning like a bee colony or an ant colony where they take directions from the queen bee. Right. And they have no control over anything at all. So on that, yes. But you have to get through that at some point, and you have to be brought to terms with what you've done. While I don't think that they should have spent the entire rest of their natural lives in prison, they should have been imprisoned at least until they are no longer brainwashed, at the very least.
I can agree with that.
So they can no longer be, or they can be not a danger to society. That's at least the bare minimum. Right. And I don't know if they would deserve to go to the death row cells by themselves. Maybe a mental institution or a secure rehabilitation center where they are still locked up, but they're getting treatment more so than the one psychologist coming in to see them. Right. So they did a very good job in this movie of making the girls sympathetic, even though they crazy. Yeah. They burned crosses into their faces. All of them, just like Charlie. Yep. That's not a representation of a sane person.
No. Yeah, so...
What did you think of them?
I mean, so I think that's one thing that bothered me about this film. So they were trying very hard to make you feel bad for the girls, and they succeeded, because I was questioning what I knew about the Manson murders after I watched it, because I was kind of confused. But, so they show them in the death row cells. So that had to have been almost directly after the whole thing happened, because they were sentenced to life, but then California got rid of the death penalty, and their sentences were automatically commuted to life instead of death. So that obviously hadn't happened yet. So at the point in the movie that they were showing, these girls were still very under Charlie's spell. And Van Houten in particular was basically going so far as to say that not only did Charlie not have anything to do with this, but that she would have committed murder whether or not she met him. And she was like going into detail about like I don't know if it was a sister or an adopted sister or whatever that she would have killed. And she came from a very good background. She had a very good education, like all these things. And people were saying like she was crazy in her own right. Now, I don't know how true it all is. I don't know. Obviously, I'm reading from the perspective of somebody else, and I've done articles and things like that. But still, it took a long time, and she got denied parole a lot of times because she was saying these crazy things. Right. So, I don't know how sympathetic that is. Now, if they had included somebody like the Linda Caspian that I had mentioned, I feel like they could have had the same effect with a character who is widely kind of regarded as a sympathetic character. Right. So, I don't know. Like, that just kind of feels weird for me because I'm all about, like, supporting the women and giving them a voice, but I don't know if these are the women I want to get behind. I don't know. Maybe there's more to their story that I really don't know, but from what I've seen and read, they don't seem...
Well, it seemed to make the one woman less responsible than all of the others.
Right. Leslie Van Houten.
Leslie Van Houten. Just rather than having killed a whole bunch of people, including an 8.5-month pregnant woman, right, she basically stabbed a dead body in this movie. Right. So I don't know if I necessarily would have counted that as murder. And I don't know if I would necessarily have given her life in prison if that's, in fact, the facts of the case.
Right. Now, I don't actually remember what she particularly did. Right. I don't remember the facts of the case, but I just remember she wasn't awfully sympathetic. She didn't ring as somebody sympathetic. I don't know if maybe they painted her that way because she is up for parole this year. So I do know that the person who wrote this book, which I do want to talk about her a little bit, wrote this screenplay. I do know that she was asked by the person who was the teacher / psychologist or whatever in jail to not do anything to mess up their chance of parole. That could have influenced why it was portrayed that way. I'm not saying it did. I'm just saying I did read that. That is a possibility.
I mean, there were a lot of instances where you just felt for the girls. One of them, for me, was when they're talking to the people, and then the look of confusion from the people they're talking to about, you think that's actually what's happening? You think that's reality. That's not.
Right. So for people that don't know, they believed, the Manson family, I suppose, that a race war was going to start, and that Charles Manson was basically going to ignite the race war by having these murders and blaming it on African Americans.
The Black Panthers, specifically.
Oh, I didn't know it was the Black Panthers specifically, but by saying such as piggies, right? Isn't that what it was? Like something piggies?
Death to pigs, and Helter Skelter was written on the wall.
Right,
and
things
all
like that. To make it look like African Americans started this, and then apparently
hide into the desert until all the white people were murdered, and then because he's literally the only white person left, they're obviously going to have to put him in charge, which is incredibly racist.
Right. Like horribly racist. And
I love that scene in the black guy that they're talking to, the African-American gentleman. He's like, you think if that happened, we'd put a white person back in charge? I mean, 100% fair.
Right.
You have us on that one. Yeah, I mean...
Right. Now, I honestly, from what I read, Charles Manson really believed that. But I don't know if he actually believed that or if he used that as another way to manipulate and get people to do things. Because from everything I've read, he wasn't a dumb person. Like, he was crazy, he was awful, but he wasn't stupid.
No.
So I'm curious if he knew it was a story he could sell, so he sold it type thing.
I think it's more he used it originally for that purpose, but then it warped in his mind and it started to become part of his narrative and just, well, this is what I said, so this is now the truth.
Right. Right. You spout a lie so many times you start to believe it type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to go from here.
Do you have anything else on the movie itself? Because I do want to talk about the person who wrote it.
Well, I have to do a history fact. History minute.
Tyler's History Minute.
Okay, you can insert that there. Go ahead.
So the history minute I have is Lynette Squeaky Fromm.
Okay.
And she was a devout Charles Manson follower.
No, she was not in this movie, was she?
She was the woman servicing the old gentleman.
Okay.
So she was in the movie. She was not involved in any of the murders. So she did not go to prison. What happened is she would follow Charles Manson around the country to each different prison and just stay there to be close to Charles Manson.
Wow.
And for years afterwards. Then she tried to shoot President Gerald Ford.
Why?
Darling, she's crazy. So she becomes the only female to attempt an assassination on an American president. And then she got locked up for that, obviously, because you can't go around shooting at the president. That's
obviously.
A crime. I mean...
Right.
No kidding. And she broke out of prison when she heard that Charles Manson was dying of cancer. And
lovely.
Yeah, crazy lady.
Great. Wonderful. Glad that I know that. I'm really glad that I know that. Okay, so we are going to run a little bit over. Sorry about that, but gotta do what we gotta do. So I do want to talk about the person who wrote the screenplay. Her name was Guinevere Turner. She did write the screenplay for American Psycho, but what I found more interesting about her was that she actually grew up in a cult.
Really?
Yes. So she actually grew up in what they call the Lyman family. It is you guessed it, a Boston-based cult because everything relates back to Boston. But anyway, this cult actually still exists today.
Really? What do they do? What do they believe?
Well, they believe, I'm glad you asked, they believe that the world is going to end But it's okay because the aliens are going to come and bring them to Venus.
Okay.
Yep. They didn't do anything horrible. They did some robberies. They did try to kill, I believe it was Ronald Reagan. They didn't succeed. They own some buildings in Fort Hill, Boston, I believe.
Okay.
They've kind of gone out of the limelight. They didn't kill anybody, like nothing crazy, but
no mass suicide,
Nope, nothing like that. But she said that she was able to write this movie with a perspective of what it feels like to be in a cult. No, she wasn't a young woman. She was born into the cult. Her mom got pregnant at 19 and she became a baby in the cult. Right. She did get out pretty young, but she said that she kind of like got to know what it was like. And this cult actually was led by also a musician. His name was Mel Lyman, I believe. So obviously he, I would assume, is dead by now and it's led by somebody else, but I don't really know. All I know is she said it's still in existence now. So yeah, so I thought that was really interesting to think about the fact that whoever wrote this did very much understand what it's like to be indoctrinated and all of that type of thing. And then just one last random thing we should note is that the person who played Charles Manson also played Doctor Who because...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, nerds
he actually nailed the performance. I think the acting for this was, for the most part, very well done.
He was actually more attractive than the real Charles Manson.
Well,
just want to throw that out there.
I mean, he's a professional actor, darling. They generally are.
Right.
I did have a couple things. Did you know that Charles Manson studied Scientology and found it too crazy even for himself? Now I'm on a list of Scientology people that are going to hate me.
You know what?
But
there's nothing I can say to that.
And then I wanted to talk about that final scene in the movie where she gets on the motorcycle, which I really liked because it's the whole how easily your life can change with one different decision.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know, Elizabeth Van Houten hooks up with a biker. He leaves and he comes back in the movie to rescue her. She stays with Charles Manson and then goes to prison forever. The final scene is her getting on the motorcycle and leaving, presumably to not be there for the murders and not spend the rest of her life in prison, which was just an interesting take on it.
Right.
For a historical movie, it was an odd twist at the end, which I enjoyed.
The power of one decision.
One simple change is all it takes. The butterfly, one simple thing that you do differently can impact.
Absolutely true. I mean, we should add the Butterfly Effect movie to our list because that's what it's all about.
Right. It was just I really enjoyed that as the parting bit of this movie. So,
I did too, except for knowing that the things she said, I don't think that's the case.
Right.
But regardless. So we haven't done promos in a while, and this is not a typical promo at all, but because we're doing true crime, I did want to do this. So the promo reads, join Jamie and John, two friends from the opposing sides of the Kentucky-Tennessee borderline on their podcast, True Crime Cast. Even though several of the towns that are, unfortunately, home to the crimes that they cover on the show may be small, the atrocities are just as heinous and wild as the ones in the big city. On True Crime Cast, these small town crimes, which often get overlooked, are brought to light. From Appalachian murder mysteries to some of the most infamous and unsettling killing sprees the world has ever seen, True Crime Cast covers it all. Listen to True Crime Cast wherever you listen to your podcast. Distributed by Stove Leg Media. So, if you guys want to check out other true crime things, check them out. I have not gotten to listen to them, but I have like 4 of their podcasts queued up, but I intended to do it over the weekend, but I basically died in bed. So, anyway.
All right, so...
Do we want to move into Audience Ask?
Audience Asks.
Spoilers, we have barely none because literally no one's seen this movie. But given that it's a new movie and just hit Amazon Prime, I don't blame any of you.
I still blame everyone.
Of course you do.
Well, obviously.
So yes, we're moving on to that.
Sure.
I'm gonna try not to. Nope, I can't. So you can read the name of the podcast that asked a question.
The Fallacious Trump Podcast.
Yep, there you go. Thank you. There was a persistent rumor that Manson auditioned for the Monkees. It's almost certainly not true, but which monkey would he have replaced, and what would the resulting show have been like?
I honestly don't know the Monkees, so I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yeah, see, I'm not old enough to know the Monkees.
So I've heard songs by the Monkees, but I don't know the different people in the band.
No, me neither, at all. Actually, I would not be able to name a Monkey song off the top of my head right now.
Well, now you put a pressure on me. I can't do it. Performance anxiety is a real thing.
So, to Basada Geek Podcast, when you do that trivia thing with us, music trivia would be wonderful to add in there. I'm just letting you know. Just a little tip.
No. We're banning music trivia and or pop culture altogether.
I'm just saying, might be a good idea. But I did read in Helter Skelter that...
Hey, we're the Monkees.
You had to go for the one where it had the name in it just because... Yeah, okay. Yeah. That's fine.
It's their best or most well-known song. That's all I got.
Good job. Anyway, in Helter Skelter, they did mention that he auditioned with... I wanted to say it was someone from the Beatles that helped him audition. Beach Boys. Thank you.
The
you
drummer,
got
Dennis.
It. Yes. So that I know is true.
Well, he was in the movie, actually.
Right.
Not the actual person, but someone portraying the drummer who wanted to get high all the time and have lots of...
Now, I know that he had regretted all of his interaction with him and all of that afterwards. But, so that I know is true. I've actually never heard the Monkees thing.
I didn't either. Did you know that... Did you know that they actually have a song where Charles Manson reportedly wrote it for the Beatles? Or not the Beatles, Beach Boys. They retitled it Never Learn Not to Love. Because it was the one that he was singing in the movie that they got on the record, but then because of the murders, they changed the name. I
did not know that.
Yeah. That's
kind of weird. Why would they keep the song? Like, why would you want...
Because it was already on the album that they released, so they already had the song, they just retitled it after the...
Oh, well, that's weird. But anyway, I do need to do one more because we have to do two. In fairness, I'm pretty sure this is a joke, but we have nothing else. So 143 said, why did his mom call him Charles in bed? I have no idea what that means. If it was for Ed Gein, I would totally get like what you're joking about.
Gein.
Ed Gein, I'm sorry. I read. I don't listen to a lot of things. So, but I
was that brought up in the movie?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know anything about Charles Manson's family.
Me neither, honestly. But if he did, she's at least partially responsible for making him the horrible person that he is.
That's fair.
That's a creepy, horrible thing to do to a person.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, I'm dying of heat in here. So we need to move this along, and we're also well over. So Can we do our ratings?
Reviews.
Ratings or reviews, yep.
Okay, so you can start as usual.
Well, I'm going to go with Rotten Tomatoes 51%, and then audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 93, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm. Although there were no audience reviews listed, only critic reviews. Odd.
I didn't understand that, so I'm going to be more in line with the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay. Do you have a reason or just solid 7?
I mean, nothing really jumped out at me from this movie other than the actors, for the most part, it was well acted, but it was just, I don't know if I needed another Charles Manson movie or kind of adaptation or anything. I mean, there's a Quentin Tarantino one coming out, and that looks terrible.
Looks terrible? Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are in it.
Well, the fact that they're releasing it on the anniversary of the murders is tacky and horrible.
That doesn't make me want to see it less.
I mean, the cast is fantastic in the movie, but I don't want to see it based on that one fact alone, that they're releasing it on the anniversary of the murders. It's like, guys, how terrible can you really be?
I mean, it is awful, but at the same time,
no, it's a star-studded cast. It's all of the actors.
Right. Well,
right.
anyway.
So I'm going to give it a 7.
I was going to actually give it a 7.5.
Okay.
I am interested in the story, and I do like that they took a different perspective and they didn't just focus on Charles Manson.
Right.
But I don't like that it felt that they were trying to skew the narrative of the story and they were leaving out parts that may have made the girls look bad because they really wanted that sympathetic portrayal. I felt like they could have done it differently and still had the same effect.
Right.
But I do understand that they didn't want to mess up the girl's chance for parole. And very likely, I do believe in second chances. At this point, Leslie Van Houten is like in her 60s. She very well could have changed and be absolutely eligible for parole.
Now, isn't she?
I thought I read she was 63, but it could have been an old article.
I mean, well, so she was 18 in 1969.
Yeah.
So that's however many years. So, yeah.
I'm not
going to do the math.
No, you're the math person here. But anyway, so she very well could be eligible for parole and have changed and repent and all of that. I don't take that away from her. But the story that they were telling was back then. And right. I do feel that they weren't very forthcoming with all the facts. And that bothered me.
Well, I think that's fair. So next week's choice, my choice.
Your choice. And everyone's going to be so excited.
Death of Stalin?
Yes, more history.
Comedy history.
I mean, I've never seen it.
You are all welcome. I am bringing up the level of discourse one movie at a time.
Lovely. So this is going to be great. I've never seen it. I'll probably hate it. So...
I've never seen it either. I saw the trailer and it looked totally my thing.
Great. So yeah, come back next week. If you want to talk to us outside of the podcast, we're on Instagram and Twitter at CinematicallyC, and we're on Facebook at Cinematically Correct's Listener Group, but we're not actually there. I just say it because it feels right. Also Gmail at cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com. And thanks to Jake at Athos Music for our intro and outro music, and we will see you next week for Death of Stalin.